I had to go up to Newcastle for these tests. And I think it was just like measuring the pressure in my arm. But the problem with mine was, I think because it was acute, nothing would bring it on so severely as rowing, but I obviously couldn't row when I was at the hospital. So we kind of just like sat there and tried to like mimic my rowing motion. We just like did some like weights. Yeah, I had like a dumbbell and was just like trying to like do the exercises. And like the pressure was rising in them. I'm not quite sure how you measure the pressure, but I think with it, like something was inserted inside. The pressure was like rising, but not to the point where it was like showing the exact same symptoms as I'd had when I rode. But I think the pressure rose enough that the surgeon knew from what I described my symptoms as well, and then from the pressure rising slightly that I had it. And then he was like, quite simply, it's not going to get better. It's not going to go away, especially what I do. So like the only option was surgery at that point. Yeah.
Right. And were you assessed like based on pain? Like was pain parameter which they assessed? Was it disproportionate to what?
Yeah, I think like pain, like the way I described it. So like when it got to its absolute worst, I was just in the middle of a race and I like couldn't hold on to my blades anymore or my oars anymore. Because I had like no feeling in my hands, or they were just like kind of like claw shaped. And then I literally just had to like I couldn't I think I like managed to finish it just through somehow kind of like clinging on. But like it was like my arms were stuck like that for like a few hours kind of thing. Like I couldn't do anything. So like yeah, the pain I was in was like pretty horrific. And then like throughout the rest of that day and then like the days afterwards, it was just like still there. Yeah.
See, okay. And what was the time from which, you started feeling the sensation to when the surgery was actually performed? Was it
Yeah.
in the range of hours or days?
No, so I'd like had symptoms for a while, I think. So my worst symptoms were February 2023. So that was when the race was. But I think I'd been experiencing problems for a while, but we hadn't really realized quite the extent of them, or I hadn't maybe wanted to say, like definitely for like the season leading up to that and a couple of seasons before. And then that happened in 2023. And then I think like my physios and stuff were aware, but we didn't really, I kind of just had to take time out of the boat. They didn't really assess me for it. And they kind of had a feeling it was compartment syndrome, but I wasn't on the senior team at that point. I was like an unfunded athlete just training at a club. I was like in the development system, but I wasn't really seen as a priority. So I was just kind of like managing it myself, and like through myself and my coach, we just like would take time out of the boat when I needed to. So then the kind of symptoms would settle down. And it was also like the end of the winter season. And so my that race I was talking about, that was a 5K race, whereas summer racing is over 2K. And so we didn't really have time or an opportunity to go and investigate and have the surgery at that point, because I needed to do the summer racing if I wanted to stand a chance of doing anything, like my career to like continue to progress. And throughout the summer we were able to manage it just because the distances were shorter, and like we'd found ways to like manage the symptoms. Like we would just have to have massage in between or after races, and like use recovery compression garments and stuff, and then just keeping them rowing to a minimum. So only really doing like the intensity and stuff when I had to, and at other points taking time out of the boat and just going and sitting on the bike, for example. So it was only at the end of the season that I then went and had these tests, and that was when, yeah, the surgeon said that, and that's then I had surgery pretty quickly. I think a few weeks after that appointment.
What was your recovery like, just out of interest?
Yeah, it was, first as surgery goes, I think it's quite a quick recovery, because it is, I mean, you guys probably know better than me, but because it's kind of just flesh that they're putting into. So I had 2 weeks unable to do anything to let the wounds heal, and then I was able to start exercising again. But I only really started using my arms probably after, I have it written down, but probably 4 weeks. Was slowly able to just like use 1 kg dumbbells. Before that point, it was just like mobility and getting used to like move my arms again. And then like, yeah, I would do like 1 kilogram dumbbells the next week, 2, and so on. But like I had a really tight schedule to stick to because I had to have surgery. I had the surgery 10 weeks before Olympic trials. So like it was like the tightest of schedules. Like we couldn't really delay, and we couldn't like take time to, we couldn't really just like, we had to hit every single week that we planned out. So like it was like a quick recovery in terms of like how other sporting injuries maybe recovered from. But yeah. Tight.
And have you found, is it just like completely okay now, or do you still suffer with anything?
So I'm unsure if I still get problems in my right. My right was always the one with the biggest issue, and I think I still kind of get problems. I don't know if it still gets tight, but I'm not sure if that's related to a wrist problem. But my left's completely fine, and like I have no problems with that. So yeah, I've like more or less complete recovery. It's just figuring out what's going on with my right arm.
Just out of interest, are you right-handed by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what's quite interesting with compartment syndrome is that I don't know if you know much about it, but athletes are more likely to get it. And that's because they're like, more muscle, they have bigger muscles in these areas. And I guess as a rower, you're using your forearms quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's interesting actually that it seems like you got worse pain in your right arm. Because that kind of, it's interestingly, it makes sense because it's probably your dominant arm when you're rowing.
Yeah. And definitely when it was at its most bad, pre-surgery, like when I'd write and stuff, that would bring on the symptoms. So I had to like keep writing to a minimum kind of thing, because that really would trigger. So yeah, that makes sense.
Did you have good support within your team, and also like your medical like as in medical and your training team and what was like their understanding of compartment syndrome as well?
Yeah, I really did, to be fair. Like we sat down, me, my coach, physio, and we had a physiologist as well, and we like planned out the schedule. So we all knew what was happening. And then once I'd had the surgery, I had so much support from my teammates and coach and staff. And then my physio, she was actually great. She'd had no previous experience in dealing with this injury, but she had the input of so the Paralympic physio here for rowing. He's had a lot of experience in this field. A lot of the Paralympic rowers have had compartment syndrome because they actually, especially the guys who are in the wheelchairs, rowing is just arms for them, whereas at least for us it's legs as well.
Sure.
So he had so much experience in that field, so he inputted into her, and then through that she was able to help me. So yeah, I was really lucky that I had some great support around me, and I mean I wouldn't have made it to Olympic trials without that.
No, that's brilliant to hear. Have they go like, has it been like looked on for like long term? So like your training is sort of like tailored to that being something that could come back, and it's being aware of it. And do you sort of certain things of what you're pushing yourself or levels now because of it? Or
I think like myself, I'm very much aware that I need to ensure like it doesn't come back, and like I think a lot of that's like related to my technique. So it's like working my technique and stuff with my coach, and then physio wise, like, well, I'm an athlete that's injury prone anyway. Like I've had multiple other issues, but it's like offloading and going on the bike when like things start to get sore, or just as a preventative measure as well. So yeah, definitely something I'm aware of.
It must be quite hard, because the whole ethos, the whole mindset of an athlete is pushing yourself to the limit, isn't it, to try and get the most out of you. And in a way, there's a mentally and physically there's a thing in your head that's just sort of you're aware of, isn't it, that sort of sort of stops you. Well, not stops you, but yeah, it must be in the back of your head.
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to like manage, and you realize that listening to your body is like the most important thing. Like, yeah, listening to your body instead of that little voice that's telling you to do more.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry, Becky. So did you have to like consult your surgeons every now and then, or was that just a one-off surgery?
I don't think I had to. I think maybe he just checked in with me a couple of weeks after. But no, I didn't have to. I'm not, I guess because it was in Newcastle, it was so far away, whereas maybe if I'd been closer, I'd have had a check in with him. But I think my physio was kind of like that point of contact, so she was able to just check that everything was going okay. And yeah, like when the stitches and stuff were removed, I couldn't go to Newcastle for that. I just had them done in my like local doctor's surgery.
Also, do you have any idea about, or do you remember like what the pressure readings were? That's something that was just out of your.
I can't remember.
No,
I was
as
trying to
in,
find.
I'm not talking about like a specific number. Like, was it something where they said something? It was. I think that's that's a bit
Oh yeah,
difficult.
I do remember it being mentioned. I just can't remember the numbers. I didn't. I know he had a number in mind that was kind of like the number at which,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
That's what I was expecting.
yeah, I can't remember that number, and I know like the exercise we were doing
Yeah.
meant I didn't reach that number, but
Okay.
I'd kind of like the pressure had risen enough. I just
Okay, that's
not
fine.
good with numbers. Sorry.
That's
If I find
totally
out, I
fine.
can email.
Totally fine. Yeah.
And did you have to go to Newcastle? Was it because it was a specialist there, or
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So I was on Bristol Rowing paid for my surgery, so I went to the Nuffield in Newcastle, and
Oh, nice.
That surgeon had done all the previous rowers who'd had this issue, so it was kind of like the place to go for it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice to know.
Yeah.
Safe hands. But like, that's the thing, even like when I've been like listening to these guys and some of the stories, like, yeah, getting a specialist, at least it feels like in something like this where it seems so subjective and like often is done as preventative rather than like with people actually having compartment syndrome. Yeah. It feels like it's just such a strange and not a risky kind of injury, but like
I think I had that reassurance that he'd seen it enough, and he like knew what was going on. And I guess it is quite niche. Like I've not really heard of many people outside of like the rowing bubble like experiencing it. And I remember like the first time I experienced the issues, the physio I had, he had no experience in rowing, and so he was like sitting all these different things, and he said it was like impossible. Like he was like, you can't get compartment syndrome there, and I was like, okay, I don't know. And then when I actually saw a rowing physio, they were like, no, like you're right, it's fine. Like, and they then had to tell him what was going on. So yeah, I think I'm glad. Yeah, I was dealt with fine.
Did you find that kind of like frustrating in a way that, because obviously not many people are aware of compartment syndrome, that you had some people that knew what it was but were telling you, no, you don't have it, because it's, even in your case, it was quite niche.
Yeah, no, that's something I did struggle with, and I was kind of like second guessing myself and being like, okay, so what is the issue then? And I'm glad I had the input of like rowing physios. I'm glad I was like high enough up in the program to have that support. Whereas if I'd experienced these issues maybe a few years ago, and like had just seen that guy, for example, I think I would just been going around in circles, and I probably still would be experiencing issues now because there wasn't that knowledge. It's only really what I felt like it was only really in the rowing sphere that there was that knowledge.
Do you think almost that like there could be like more awareness or some sort of information on just like all different types of injuries? I don't know how you're aware as you're developing as an athlete, like on the early stage and going through the whole process of like different injuries that you could get.
Oh my gosh, definitely, yeah.
Whether that could, even though it is, well, it sounds like it does happen a lot with rowers anyway, but do you think that or something similar might be helpful in terms of like awareness, and I guess make it less scary for when it does happen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's having that awareness and that knowledge. And so a few, like this is compartment syndrome, but a few years ago I had hip injuries. I had hip labral tears and broke my hips, so I had to have arthroscopies for that. But that was when I was very, very new to rowing. Like I'd only been rowing for a year when I first experienced these issues. And again, like the physios I was surrounded by, they thought it was related to my back, or like they thought it was related to like tight hip flexors, and no one really knew about like labral tears in rowers or in athletes in general, to be honest, because I'd been doing sport since a young age, but there was no knowledge of that. And so I went round and round in circles for months, like trying to find the answers to this pain. Like seeing chiropractors, different physios, osteopaths, until like eventually someone's like I was able to get a scan on my hips and that showed the problem. But like I think it would have been easy to give up and just be like, okay, I just can't do this anymore. But because that knowledge wasn't shared, and I wasn't in a program where rowing physios were able to see me every day. So I do think like it is that like lack of knowledge and lack of awareness in some areas that then hinder like development athletes or just like people in general.